Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to part two of the Jewish religious system. Now, we've already discussed the Pharisees and the Synagogues, how that was all intertwined. Now we'll do the Sadducees. These were the two main parties in the time of Christ. So they were more political than religious. They were wealthy, aristocratic class, priestly. Remember, the Pharisees weren't priestly, they were business guys, and the Sadducees were priests. And all their activity was centered around the temple. Okay? They came out right about that intertestamental period again. There it is again. Like I said, a lot of stuff happened during that time. The high and chief priests were Sadducees. Now remember, these are the guys that condemned Jesus to death. So that gives the idea. They were Sadducees. Now they only accepted the written books of the law. Period. That was all they were concerned about. They rejected any oral tradition, anything by the prophets, teaching of angels, or the resurrection. So, to put in the context, Pharisees, resurrection, yes. Sadducees, resurrection, no. Big difference. And these guys fought all the time. Like I said, they were the Sadducees and the Pharisees were the two largest religious parties. They were smaller, but very wealthier than Pharisees were. And it was a closed society. Membership was hereditary, so it was heralded on. They had a most concern for wealth and position. That was their main thing. They hardly agreed on anything. Okay. And then they felt that the Hellenistic culture wanted to weigh in throughout Palestine, and Roman authority were necessary in maintaining peace and stability in Jewish. In other words, bend to get along kind of idea is what they had in mind, and to keep them in power. They were political. They realized they had to stay in power. Now, after the temple was destroyed, which we'll talk about here in a little bit and how that happened, back in 70 AD, the Sadducees, they just died out. There's pretty much nothing left of them after that. Pretty interesting, huh? So now I got to put my notes. Okay, now we go on to another sect of this religious system. They're not in the Bible, so we got this from other areas. Now these are the hope I pronounce this right, the Essenes, okay? And this was like a shadow party. Scripture doesn't mention them. They kind of forsake society and lived in the wilderness, kind of that John the Baptist kind of thing. They all lived in the wilderness. They thought that they alone were the people of God and that everybody else was an enemy, period. Now, as far as their livelihood go, they had a very simple life. They provided their own food necessities. They were never married. They studied the scriptures diligently and basically shared everything. So, kind of like modern day hippie, the hippies of that time, if you want to put it that way. They lived all throughout Palestine, and they were much more legalistic in the law of Moses than any other ones. They're very legalistic. And some people think that maybe some Zealots came from this order, after Rome came in. And this is what we'll talk about next, is our Zealots. Okay, now, they showed a much greater zeal for the law than Pharisee, okay? And they were directed toward a fanatical nationalism. So they thought, hey, by any means necessary, we're going to get Rome out of here. Okay, because Jewish independence was all they cared about. They didn't care how they did it. They studied, how to fight and felt that, hey, we're going to do whatever we have to do to get rid of the Roman rule. They refused to pay any taxes whatsoever. Excuse me. And they also felt that they had to resist any nation that wanted to take them over, period. That was it. And to gain independence, like I said, they would do anything. So they were mean. If you ever watch Chosen, you kind of see how they kind of did things. They were very, very, very diligent. They took out any vengeance on anybody that wronged them. And they punished by death idolatry, apostasy, and collaboration with the enemy was a big no-no with these guys. Which is kind of amazing because, there was a zealot that actually became a follower of Christ. They actually wanted to use Jesus to gain the Roman independence. They seen Jesus' miracles and stuff, and, just as, disciples probably figured too that he was going to take out Rome. So they were probably right with Jesus at first, but now what's pretty interesting is that they launched a full out later on after Jesus' death, and what they wanted to happen didn't happen. They led a full out rebellion on Rome about AD 70. Big date. To where this led to the complete destruction of Jerusalem and the entire nation, the temple, everything. So the Zealots were actually responsible for the destruction. They just went out on an all-out rebellion, and boom, it was done. Okay, so, and the next would be the Scribes. Now, they were pretty interesting. They were mentioned numerous times in the Old Testament, and most well known in Ezra. If you go to Ezra, you'll see a lot about scribes there. From the time of King David, though, up to Christ, their duties kind of changed. At first, they were just secretaries and clerks in the Old Testament. So they just basically ascribed just what happened, this kind of history kind of guy. Now, at the time of Christ, the scribes became lawyers or teachers of the law, were scribes. And they had basically three main duties. They copied, they preserved, and interpreted of the law. So their duties radically changed. They were a very professional group and very respected in the Jewish community. And their word, oh man, I am so sorry. Their word on the law was final. That was it. Once it came to a scribe, that was it. And they all agreed on one thing, that Christ, they wanted him out of the picture. All three of them did. And for them to actually agree on certain things, they didn't agree on how, for a while, but they all agreed. In the time of Christ, they were a separate group of men, and they usually aligned with what the Pharisees said. So, not the Sadducees, but they just, kind of fell in line with Pharisees. Okay, whatever. So that was that's what the scribes did. So when you see scribes in the New Testament, you kind of get an idea of what they were about. Now the Sanhedrin. That's a big one in the Bible. And I didn't know anything about this either until I read it. Now, the Gospels, they use the word council or court, but it's actually the Sanhedrin. This is where all the Jews, they govern themselves through the Sanhedrin, or council, or court, basically, is what's used in the Bible. And it was the highest governing council and the local judicial council. And it went way back to Moses' day, where Moses appointed people to oversee each nation, each tribe, because it was too much for them. So this is where they got the idea for the Sanhedrin. Now, this thing operated on two different levels, which was pretty interesting. First, there were the smaller councils, court. Okay, this is where people went. For smaller towns, there were 7 members of them that kind of the judges. And there were 23 members for larger towns. So it was divided up. There, they had wide power in civil and religious matters. So that's where you went to have all your civil and religious stuff taken care of in a court of law. Now remember, Jews did their own affairs, so naturally they had their own courts to deal with it and try to keep Rome just, happy. And Rome was fine with that. If it got to Rome, then you could have a problem. This is where, you could get crucified and all sorts of stuff. Oh, man. I just got something caught in my throat, folks. Now, the second level, it was the Great Sanhedrin, or the Supreme Court itself. This was located in Jerusalem. Okay, so this is where the big matters got settled. And it was mainly settled by the high priest, which was Sadducee. All their activities centered around temples, so they didn't go anywhere. And there were 71 men involved in this. And there were some Sadducees, some Pharisees, some Scribes, and a representation of some elders. They were a wealthy, noble class of people that was there. And the high priest was a Sadducee. He was the leader of it. And basically he had the authority. He was the final say-so on how things went as far as the Supreme Court of Jerusalem went down. They had all the influence in Jewry. Their influence was just basically everywhere. So basically it just trickled down to what they said went. Period. They were the high number of this is where it ends. It was the most powerful body of the Jews. Yeah, kind of like ours. And it's amazing how we model our stuff after the Bible. We'll talk about that in a second. Now, if you read the Bible, you kind of realize that the high priest condemned him. He was a Sadducee. The Pharisees condemned him. And Sadducees, they arrested him from the temple guards, and brought him to the high court in the middle of the night. Remember, they can impose a death sentence, but they can't execute it. Rome forbidden on that. You had to go to Rome to do that. And that's how that whole thing played out, and why Jesus went to Pilate. Because they condemned Jesus to death, and then they actually had to get Rome's approval to have that done. They couldn't do it themselves. That was forbidden to do. And, with the greatest power over the people too, what they pretty much said went. So that was the way everything went with that. So that was the Sanhedrin, so we kind of know. Now, next video, we're going to be discussing the man himself. Who's man? Jesus. Oh, yeah. I can't wait to get into that one. But now we kind of know the background of the writers. We kind of know everything that's been going on in some of these representations when we're going through the actual Gospels themselves. You kind of know that. Oh, this is what this is. Oh, this is what this is. Better understanding. And that's what it's all about, folks. So, what's the final thought into this? That the influence and power and money can corrupt. It corrupted a Jewish nation. And when you have leaders in power, that's all they want. Nothing good can come from it. And it's pretty amazing is how our history so aligns with Bible, and how our system is so set up with biblical. We have lower courts, we have higher courts, then we have the highest court. Wow, did we just not study that? Comprised of people that do those. Okay, we may have anywhere between 1 judge and 4 judges. In fact, our jury system is based on the same way jury of your peers. So in other words, other people kind of discern if you have 2 or 3 witnesses to see if something's right, biblical. Our whole nation is found on a biblical principle. I mean, whether people like it or not, that's the way it is. And that's what we got to get back to, folks. We have totally thrown God out of everything, out of our courts, out of our schools, out of everything. And that's so sad. It is. Now, we that know exactly what's going to happen later, we kind of, yeah. But we never stop fighting, do we? No, we don't. We never stop fighting to proclaim the word of Christ. That is our primary mission. Don't forget it. Okay, I am the bald guy. I cannot wait to get into my next one. I hope you enjoyed and kind of got a good gist of how things are going on with these synoptic gospels. And I will see you next time. I love you, folks. Remember, no religion, relationship. Keep focusing on your relationship with God. Peace out.